Awesome. So thanks again for everybody who was able to hop on and join us. This is our October Voter-Friendly Campus webinar. We're really excited to bring you kind of a whole hodgepodge of resources and some updates around tools for doing democratic action planning. So we've got a really exciting group of folks joining us to help run through a lot of different content today, which will be great. It means you don't have to hear from me the whole webinar. So that's always nice, I think, for everybody. So yeah. We're going to go through the most recent update to the Strengthening American Democracy Action Planning Guide and the associated rubric. This is the third iteration of the guide and the second time the rubric has been updated to go with it. We'll go through updates to the fun planning resource, Votes and Ballots. We'll talk about the National Study of Learning, Voting, and Engagement and how kind of that data and those reports can help in the action planning process. And then we'll also talk about some more opportunities coming up next month, both at the SLSV post-election gathering and the All-In Awards ceremony, to continue to hang out with folks from this community and talk about this topic. And then we'll have some time at the end to hop into some breakout groups and start kind of sharing some ideas and asking some questions as a group. So it should be really fun. I'm very excited for today. So I'm going to turn it over to Rahila to take us away.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Mike. And hi, everybody. My name is Rahila. For those of you that may not know me, I'm the Deputy Director at Campus Vote Project. And today I'll be talking about version 3 of the Strengthening American Democracy Guide. Strengthening America, oh my gosh, y'all, it's a Monday and I'm already like, so bear with me. Version 3 of the Strengthening American Democracy Action Planning Guide and rubric, brought to you by the SLSV Coalition and other members of the SLSV Coalition, including Campus Vote Project. And so let's get into it. Why action planning? For the action planning process, the reason that these tools exist is really to support y'all's campus voting coalitions and institutionalizing nonpartisan democratic engagement. The guide is really not intended to be prescriptive, but instead it's there to provide guiding questions and considerations based upon what is learned through student engagement efforts. It's meant to be flexible so that it can adapt to different campuses, and it supports long and short-term goals to provide a lot of tactics to reach those goals. So ultimately, look at the guide as a tool, and a tool is only as good as its usage. Next slide, please. Here's a thank you slide. Before we get started, I wanted to make sure that folks note all of the individuals that supported the revision process. So we have AGF, All In Campus Democracy Challenge, Democracy Works, Campus Vote Project, SLSV, Student Pergs, NASPA, and ASCU's American Democracy Project. So version 3, let's get into it. The most notable changes you'll see here is that we have a focus of on diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice, a stronger focus on those elements. We also pulled out program tactics that surfaced between 2018 to 2020. So things like Ask Every Student and All In's President's Commitment. And we also continue development about voter mobilization. So the revision team looked through the current definitions that were provided to support this work, and most of them stay the same, but we did have some additions to the definition. So you'll see democratic participation, full participation, SMARTY, and voter mobilization as new definitions in this guide. Here are the action planning steps. A lot of them have remained the same. And so please keep in mind that these steps are not meant to be lock and step, but instead should be considered as they fit within your individual institution's context. And you'll see the 10 different steps to the action planning here. Okay, in terms of guiding principles, we have 2 additions, and they are inclusive. So campus coalitions, goals, strategies, and tactics authentically being traditionally excluding, authentically bringing excluded individuals or groups into the process, and decision-making and policy-making in a way that shares power. That's what we're looking at when we're talking about inclusive. And when we're talking about equitable, we're talking about tactics, goals, and strategies that focus efforts on distributing resources to campus populations that have historically engaged in civic learning, democratic engagement, and voter participation at lower levels. So inclusive and equitable are two guiding principles that we've added here. Yep, so now we'll take a closer look at the 9 areas of the guide and highlight a few of the changes there. So for the executive summary, this is really meant to be the big picture of nonpartisan democratic engagement. It answers the who, what, where, when, and how. And it suggested that y'all as campuses start the summary at the onset of the writing the action plan, but not to complete it until after the campus plan has been developed. So you have a full picture of the whole process in your summary. Okay, leadership. So while the types of roles that should be involved with action planning that didn't necessarily change in the guide, the details on the roles that these people play did. So the leadership section now provides more language about who does what when, who holds and shares power and support, and also intentional diversity of those in the campus action planning process. The commitment section that you see here was expanded to include language about what this looks like at one's institution. So things like, is this commitment implicit or explicit? Who's making the commitment? How is it being upheld? Those kinds of things. In terms of landscape, it's not only just important to have an understanding of a student population, but also to understand how engaged a campus is. And so to do so, we encourage campuses to consider a variety of assessment methods, including things like Ask Every Student, the beginning college survey of student engagement, and also looking at higher education research institutes as well. So that's not to say that there aren't other great tools, but these are just a couple of them. All right, in terms of goals, the goals section was updated to reflect short-term examples in 2022 and longer-term goals for 2024 and beyond. Also, the SMARTY definition was modified to make language provided by a partner called the Management Center to now read specific, measurable, ambitious, realistic, and time-bound, inclusive, and equitable. Okay, for the strategy section, we're talking about specific programming examples that were pulled in to support campuses and reaching their long and short-term goals. So for instance, how can Ask Every Student program tools support long-term engagement? So those are the types of questions that we're looking at. We're also talking about providing prompts to folks to consider how they might anchor programmatic efforts around civic holidays. And NSolve, many of y'all are familiar with NSolve. Just to recap here, NSolve is a free study that's housed at the Institute for Democracy and Higher Education at Tufts University. And it offers colleges and universities the opportunity to learn their student registration and voting rates. And for interested campuses, also a closer examination of the campus climate for political learning, and also correlations between specific student learning experiences and voting. So through the Voter-Friendly Campus program, you're not required to participate in NSolve because it is a process to be able to participate in NSolve. But for other partners of ours, like the All-In Campus Democracy Challenge, NSolve is a part of that process. And the data for NSolve, for those that may be involved in participating, is hopefully coming soon, very soon. All right, as a part of the reporting process, it is continually encouraged for campuses to be as detailed as possible in one's report, and to modify action plans to ensure that goals are being met. And if the goals change, then these updates should be reflected in the plan as best as possible. It's also really important, as much as possible, that the plan that y'all develop be shared broadly, whether it lives on a campus website or a learning management system or with a partner like ourselves at VFC or like at All In. That's also a really good way to look at reporting. Okay, in terms of the evaluation section, evaluating the work should be really a continual process. So an action plan can be adjusted to reach your goals as an institution. And it shouldn't be limited to using data like NSolve, although that is a vital resource in helping. But you can also include anecdotal information and information that you feel is really pertinent to the evaluation of your program and your goals. All right, here we have some upcoming action planning deadlines. So we've put in here the action planning deadlines for the All In Campus Democracy Challenge, our information around deadlines around the Voter Friendly Campus program, as well as the Andrew Goodman Foundation. So you can take a look there. I did want to specifically flag for everybody on this call that the Voter Friendly Campus team, the program deadline for submitting statement of interest forms is January 31st, 2022. But the form is open and live now. So as soon as you can, please do complete the interest form so that we can ensure that you're enrolled in the program. We're looking to have 300 folks, 300 campuses, I should say, in this cohort of Voter Friendly Campus. Thank you, Mike, for putting that into the chat box. So please do fill out your interest forms as soon as you possibly can, so that we can ensure that you are in the consideration for those top 300 spots in the program. And you'll also see that in terms of the deadline for submitting an action plan, we have coordinated with All In so that is the same date. So what that means is basically once you submit the statement of interest form by the end of January, you can work on your action plan and then submit your action plan to us at Voter Friendly Campus and submit your campus plan as well to All In. And it's the same deadline for that. So I think that's it. I think that takes us through all of the revisions and updates. And we can talk more and have any more discussions that we need in breakout groups. But thank you all so much for your time.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks so much, Rahila. That was great. Really appreciate you kind of going through that and participating with all those other groups to really be thoughtful and talk to a lot of campus partners and others. And I know a lot of the folks who helped do this, look through hundreds of campus plans. So a lot really went into trying to make sure that there's a really thoughtful approach and some really important questions that are in the template and the guide. So I know it can seem like a lot when you look at it and it's like a whole booklet about writing your own plan, but I think some really great content in there. So really appreciate that. So really excited to turn it over. You guys are getting like the all-star cast today. We've got guest stars from all over the student voting space. So top-notch stuff. So Maddie Wolf from the Students Learn Students Vote Coalition is here to talk to us about the revamped votes and ballots.
Thank you, Mike. And also thank you, Rahila, for that amazing summary of the Strengthening American Democracy Guide. I feel like that has set up votes and ballots, the update for that to be really clear about what we're actually talking about. So really appreciate that. So you may or may not know what votes and ballots is. Either way, we're going to talk about it today. So you are going to be able to know the history and what's going on with it now. But essentially, votes and ballots is an interactive activity to take all of the amazing stuff that Rahila just shared about the Strengthening American Democracy Guide and using an interactive, fun, collaborative tool to actually start writing the action plan itself. So history of votes and ballots, it is a suite of team-wide strategic activities to take the guesswork out of on-campus democratic engagement. You can use votes and ballots at a campus coalition meeting, like with your own campus. You can use it at a multi-campus event like a summit, or really any other context where you want to get started on your action plan. Votes and ballots was originally created in 2018 by Democracy Works and Micah Center for Social Design with support from SLSV. I was actually super fortunate to be able to work on it as a student, and now it's exciting that 3 years later we can come and keep working on it and make it better for our partners. Essentially though, what votes and ballots is, it's like I said, the interactive activity to make it so that you take this really amazing Strengthening American Democracy Guide, and being able to kind of turn it into something super tangible and collaborative. So this past year in 2021, the SLSV Coalition's Resources and Support Subcommittee, we worked together and we've been doing it since like May. So this has been a pretty long time coming to get the product I'm going to share with you today. It was a collaboration between Democracy Works, the SLSV Coalition, and Maine Students Vote to revamp it into something that is a new digital iteration. And, you know, during COVID, we had this Votes and Ballots that was actually just like a paper activity that you have to do in person. And we adapted it in 2020 to be digital using like Google Slides. You may or may not have like actually participated in that Google Slides version, but it was an adaptation and it was kind of clunky. And we were like, you know what, if we actually put some time and effort into this, we don't have to just adapt it for digitalization, we can optimize it. And the thing that's really cool about it, and I'll share with you more, is that you can actually use it to create your action plan in a really dynamic way. So instead of it just your action plan only just being like the amazing document that you're going to put together and share for VFC and other things like All In perhaps, you can also go back to your mural board and have it as a really collaborative kind of like generative space where you can start moving your strategy around and adapting it over time too. So it's something that you can keep coming back to in this digital form, and it's just a different way to approach action planning in a really fun, collaborative, dynamic way. So I'll share more about that in a moment. We can keep going. This was a big collaborative effort too. Like, so all the names that you see here are all of the people who contributed in lots of different ways. So just wanted to keep putting them out there as much as I can to say thank you so much for all the people, some of who are on this call, who really spent some time to make this a collaborative effort across the coalition. Keep going. Ultimately, what our design challenge was how can we adapt votes and ballots to meet the evolving needs of the space and the different levels of experience of student voting. And that's what we did. So you can keep going. So what our goals were, like I shared, we wanted to make sure that we were updating votes and ballots as the Strengthening the American Democracy Guide got updated. So we just heard all about that. They go hand in hand. They're very parallel. You should use them together. Definitely, if you're using votes and ballots, you should have that guide open to you on the side as well. It's super helpful. We also want to make sure that votes and ballots can help people who are super new to the space, but also people who have been doing this before, to develop actionable, high quality action plans. And like I said, we want to optimize through digitization, not just adapt to it. Digitization can actually be super beneficial to doing things. It's not just something that we have to do, as I think we've all learned. And the other thing, especially for our nonprofit partners and also campuses who are trying to organize other campuses, we want votes and ballots to be an organizing tool. We want this to be an activity that you can do with campuses to help build power, to help be more engaged with them, and to help support them longer term over time, to be like, hey, I have access to the strategy that you put together. How's it going on this piece that you said was going to happen around now? How can we support you? And how do you keep that momentum going? And being able to use votes and ballots as a tool for that is really want to like uplift Meg McCormick from Maine Students Vote, who really brought that perspective of how can like local organizers use this as well as a tool to build power. So that's the goals. This is what's new. I'm going to actually go through these step by step. So ultimately, it's digital activity. There's an action plan form that's interactive, and we have updated tactic cards. We also have some train the trainer programming for facilitators to be super supported in facilitating this. And we've also updated the classic paper edition with all of their new updates. So we'll forward. Like I said, organizations can use this to build power in a variety of ways. So you can become trained in this. Campuses and organizations can do this. So like I said, if you're a campus and you're like, hey, I'm doing really, really well on this work, and I want to actually support other campuses. Maybe you're part of like a university system and you're like, oh, I would love to get other campuses, part of my institution, involved in this too. You can also become a facilitator to do this work with other campuses. I know that people are pretty stretched thin, but some people are really interested in that kind of thing. So you're super welcome to. And you can request copies of it to facilitate with your partners. You can also just do this with your own campus. So, you know, for example, if you are, I'm going to call out somebody on this call, Tammy, if you're wanting to do this with Cedar Crest, like you could request it, you could do it with your campus at your coalition meeting and have that as like a facilitated activity. And that's kind of the structure of it. And I'm also happy to answer any questions, but we can keep going. So there's three parts to the digital activity. And I'm going to go over them pretty lightly because we have some other stuff to get through today too. But there are some upcoming engagement opportunities I'll share at the end if you want to get a deeper dive into all of this. But when you're doing this digital activity, there's three parts. And the first one is the grounding space. We really want to make sure that the people who are doing this are, first of all, able to use this tool. Like, it is a digital tool. And as we all know, new digital tools have a learning curve to them. So this is built here to make sure you can use the tool, but it's also to make sure that you're grounding yourself in your context. So what you can do here is you have your own little specific section where you can learn how to use the tool, but also you can think about what are the strengths and challenges that you have, what are some goals that you have, and who do you represent? And then if you go to the next slide, you can also think about your landscape. So if you have that NSOLV data, you can take a look at what is your voting rates, and also where are opportunities for growth on your campus? Are there any kind of like demographics or fields of study that you think, oh, these are some areas of our campus that we could probably collaborate more with intentionally. So you have those parts where you're grounding yourself in your context. And then with the next slide, you can have a conversation together about it. So talking about who's represented in your action planning leadership team, who's not represented, thinking a lot about that NSOLV data too, of who are the areas, what are the areas on campus that you need to be partnering more intentionally with potentially, and being able to name that. The other pieces are, what are some of the strengths and challenges, and what are the goals? All of these are going to be really important for preparing you to make a really thoughtful strategy that's goal-oriented and context-oriented. And the second part is the build your strategy section. So if you've ever played Votes and Ballots before, this is the part that people like the most. This is the fun kind of card sorting activity that you may be familiar with if you've done this before. So this is where you can look through all of these like really cool tactics that were put together, that were put together originally in 2018, but adapted and updated this past year with like dozens of campus partners and nonprofit partners to be really thoughtful about how is diversity, equity, inclusion part of each tactic, and how are you really making sure that your tactics focus on things like access, and also making sure that they're balanced. And we have more things that we're thinking about in terms of not just voter registration, but also voter turnout, and also thinking about institutionalization and all those great things. So you can look through all of these fun tactic cards. You can sort them based off of things that you're already doing. So like, for example, like I think VFC is on here. So if you've applied to be VFC, you can plop that one down, said we already finished that piece of our work. Let's not focus on that right now because we already did it, but let's think about what else we can do. Or maybe that is something that you need to work on. So you can put it all there in this way that I think is like a really good visual map for what are you doing and what do you want to do? And what are things that you hope to do? What are things that are exciting to you, but maybe you don't have the capacity for, but you really want to make sure they're still present in your strategy that you can think about doing them too. So that's the strategy poster. If you want to go to the next slide, these are some of the tactics. So we have 4 categories of them. There's registration, education, turnout, and resources. So resources are cards that can just level up your work. For example, joining NSOLV, very important resource to have. So you can keep going. The last part that I think is like really, really exciting. So you have this fun collaborative activity. And I think the biggest benefit for doing that activity is getting as many voices and perspectives in on your action plan as you can together. So it's really hard to have like 9 people sitting around typing a little action plan together. Like that's something that maybe is not the process that most people will do, but what you want to do is be able to get all of those different perspectives in so that your action plan is has as, you know, is as inclusive as possible in that process. But this one is once you have that together, let's say you have like a couple people that are like, yeah, I'm going to go sit down and write this plan. And maybe you have written a plan in the past and you're able to edit it. That's awesome. That's also probably the case for most of the people on this call. But if you've never written an action plan before, or if you're like, I don't really like what we've done in the past, I want to do something that's like super strengthening American democracy guide aligned potentially, or any other case where you want to have something that you can kind of like go into a template for, that's what this is. So it's an action planning form that you can go in, answer all these questions that are based off of the Strengthening American Democracy Guide. And then if you want to go to the next slide, it will spit out a action plan draft for you that's an editable Word document. So you can use Google Docs or Word or whatever it is, Pages if you're on a Mac. And you can actually go into it, edit it, pull out your Strengthening American Democracy guide, fluff it all up and really make it your own. But it will create the structure of an action plan, which is really important for a lot of campuses that the leader who's doing this work may not have all of the time in the world on their hands, but still needs to write an action plan because it's incredibly important to do. So this should hopefully help alleviate some of that initial labor, especially like sometimes it can be hard to write things from scratch. I know I have trouble with that. And to just really be able to get more campuses started and spreading the capacity for making action plans. So that's exciting. The last things that you can do if you want to become a trained Votes and Ballots certified person, certified facilitator. We have an open partner gathering for TurboVote. So Democracy Works is the organization that makes TurboVote. And so they're also the owners of Votes and Ballots. So there's going to be an open TurboVote partner gathering. You don't have to be a TurboVote partner to co-do it. It's open for anybody. I'll drop the link in the chat after I finish talking. So there's going to be that on October 27th, I believe at like 3 p.m. or 3:30. I'll put the details in the chat. And then you can also become a facilitator at the SLSV post-election gathering that we'll share more information about. That'll be on Monday, November 10th at like 3:40 p.m. Eastern time for both of these things. So you can come to them, test it all out, become certified, do this activity with your campus, and really make sure that you are having like a fun, interactive, inclusive time as you build your action plan for this upcoming year. So that's all from Votes and Ballots. Thank you. And I will, thank you for putting that in the chat. Mike put it in the chat already. If you have any questions, I can go and answer them in the comments and stuff too.
Okay. Oh, Mike, I think you're muted.
I'm on mute. It's all good. Janae's in charge. She's up next. She's going to talk to us a little bit about NSolve, hopefully very soon, fingers crossed, maybe this week. We'll see 2020 NSolve reports out to campuses. So I wanted to do a quick refresh. So Janae's going to take it away and talk with folks about that a little bit and how that ties together with some of these other action planning tools.
Okay, yes, thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Janae. I'm the voter-friendly campus intern with Campus Vote Project. Basically, NSolve reports are really, really important in being able to set specific and measurable goals, and then also being able to assess your progress. After you've made your action plans and you're kind of tracking your progress and trying to reassess for setting goals in the future year. So NSolve, it originates from the Institute for Democracy in Higher Education at Tufts University. It will look something like this. So this one says 2014 and 2018. You might also see one in recent years. It says 2012 and 2016. So they typically compare similar elections to each other. That way you can track general election versus general, or midterm versus midterm, or whatever the case might be. So it is a report that gives you specifics about what percentage of your students that were eligible registered to vote, how many of them actually turned out to vote. And then it also gives you specific numbers so that you can compare, numerically instead of percentage-wise to your student population. So as you can see, it's very nice and pretty, and this is the first page or the first couple of pages that basically gives you a big rundown of how your school has progressed, what has changed and what hasn't. So you can see in this specific example, like 2014 to 2018, that's a huge jump in voting rate, and it was likely due to their action plan that they made and the coalition efforts that happened on campus. It also shows you what percentage of folks voted by mail, early, or in person, and whatever the case might be. For some institutions, your school does have to opt into this, I believe, but it might even give you an ethnicity breakdown of who turned out to vote, and sometimes when. It also more information on what it tells you. It gives you a breakdown by major, undergrad versus grad. Basically everything that your institution provides, it's able to show. So how can you use it? It's really important that once these reports come out, so fingers crossed, the 2020 space one, comes out this week, that we're able to use that, look at it, and assess any progress that's been made since the 2016 election. And if you had it from 2012, also building off of that. How to request it. So it is just like Mike and Rahila said earlier, it is a process to request it if you do not currently have access to it. But if you have any questions or concerns for how to do that, we can help you out. And NSolve is also important for pointing out gaps in data. So any areas where you're not sure, where do we need to improve, or how can we be more equitable in our approach? NSolve is a really good way to find that out. I think, okay, I'm going to be honest and say that as a student who benefited for 3 years from NSolve, I never actually had to do the background work of actually finding out how to participate in it. It was just something that I had. So I'm going to ask Mike to help me out with this part.
No worries. Yeah, there is a public list of campuses that are authorized for and participate in NSolve. So you can go to the IDHE website and look at NSolve and see if your campus is on there if you don't know. And also one of the changes that NSolve made in their current iteration of the authorization form that most campuses are currently operating under is that the report gets sent to 3 people. So if you go to the next slide. Basically, every campus that's authorized at this point basically should have it delivered to the president or chancellor, someone in a role like the director of your institutional research assessment. And then usually there's like a third open slot that you can fill out when you're doing the NSolve authorization form. But if you need to find it on campus, try probably with one of those other 2 offices first. And if you are having a hard time finding your report, feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to connect you to the folks at IDHE, and they can maybe let you know the specific people on your campus if you're not having a good time finding it. But they're going to send out 1,000 plus of these reports, so folks are able to look for it on campus first before directly reaching out to the team at IDHE. They would greatly appreciate that. But with that kind of quick update on kind of how NSolve fits into all of this, and hopefully reports coming out as soon as this week, I'm really excited to welcome our next All-Star, who is joining us today from across the student voting space, Stephanie, with the All-In Awards to talk about, well, All-In Democracy Challenge to talk about the All-In Awards and the SLSV post-election gathering. So if you want to take it away, Stephanie.
Good afternoon, everyone, and I hope you're having a fantastic Monday. It's hard to believe it's Monday, so if you're coming off a sugar high from the candy rush of the season, I hope you're feeling it with me. But I am so excited to be with you all today to talk about the All-In Award ceremony that is happening concurrently with the Students Learn, Students Vote Coalition's post-election gathering. So know that it's a one-stop registration. We'll make sure to get the link in the chat for you. So if you want to attend both, you're more than welcome to. You can attend one, you can get recordings, you can choose your own path there. So this year is our biannual year that we'll be presenting awards for the All-In Campus Democracy Challenge campuses that participate in our program. The award ceremony will be happening virtually November 8th, 9th, and 10th from 2 to 3:30 Eastern each day. You have the opportunity to register yourself as a primary contact for the All-In Challenge. We encourage folks to invite their voting coalitions to participate in the celebrations that's forthcoming. And if you've never done All-In, or you're new to the voter-friendly campus space and just want to see what others are talking about in regards to their NSolve data that Janae just talked about moments ago, it's a great space to just kind of jump in and learn a little bit about what's happening across the nation in regards to student voting. So again, the award ceremony will happen virtually in 2 weeks from 2 to 3:30 p.m. each day. And then the post-election gathering will have sessions after that as well as before, with some content for you to kind of dabble within that. On the next slide, you'll see the same virtual. So looking forward, what we'll have is a breakdown. So on the first day, we'll have our main ceremony event where we'll be recognizing individual champions in the voting space as well as overall demographics. So looking at who had the highest voter registration rate and turnout rates for 4 years, 2 years, public, private, so on and so forth. On Tuesday, November the 9th, we'll be recognizing campuses that participate in city or state-based challenges with All-In. So right now we facilitate 18 of those across the nation. Most of those will be gathering on the 9th to present information to their campuses within their states. If your campus challenge is not listed there, that means that there will be a ceremony that's taking place at a later date, which was contingent upon the partners within the space that helped to organize the challenge. Or if you don't see your state up there and you don't have another challenge that you're aware of, we're always interested in looking at growing that network. So don't hesitate to reach out if you're like, I would really love a Wyoming campus voting challenge. So would we can talk about it and figure out ways to celebrate great work happening in that state in 2 years. On the last day, on November the 10th, we'll also be recognizing our collegiate athletic voting challenges. So right now, All In works with 12 conferences ranging from D1 to D3 that bring in a variety of constituents to talk about student voting. So you have athletics coming together, you have faculty and staff, you have center staff, you have students, undergraduate and graduate, and we'll be celebrating their efforts across campuses. Each of the conferences have conference staff that'll be presenting the awards. So it's something exciting to really bridge the gap between athletics and the higher education space that does the student voting work. So really fun. Each of the days on the 9th and the 10th will have welcoming speakers. So on the next slide, you'll get a snapshot of who these speakers are. So on day 1, November the 8th, we will have Valerie Jarrett, who is Civic Nations Board Chair and a former representative of our fine nation. Then we also have Miguel Cardona, who's the U.S. Secretary of Education, who will be providing remarks on Monday the 8th. On Tuesday the 9th, we'll be hearing from Kim Wyam, who's the Washington Secretary of State, and Veronica DeGraffide, who's the Pennsylvania Secretary of the Commonwealth. So know that you'll have some interesting speakers. Each of the breakout sessions will also have representation from either Secretaries of States, Departments of States, or local partners that are in that state doing great work. And then on Wednesday, the 10th, we will have opening remarks from Craig Robinson, who is the Executive Director of the National Association of Basketball Coaches, who's really been helping to champion the work that came out of the NCAA's D1 All Vote No Play efforts, as well as with All In with our coaches pledge efforts in 2020. And then again, each of the individual conference breakouts will have conference staff presenting their awards. So it's intended to be a great 3 days of celebrating and learning together in the space. And for those that are gearing up for the voter-friendly campus designation, as Rahila mentioned, to hopefully be one of the 300 campuses that receive the designation this time around, this might be one stepping stone for you to think about how your campus receives that designation, uses your NSOLV data, and then has another opportunity for recognition. And with that, I'll turn it over to our SLSB colleagues or others to talk about the post-election gathering specifically.
Awesome. Yeah, so this year in conjunction, and Maddie can jump in if I miss anything on this one as well, but really excited that kind of at that same time, kind of across that group of days in the morning and afternoon sort of split, the annual post-election gathering from SLSB will be happening at the same time. As always, like, plan to have fun, plan to meet people even in a virtual space and get to network and collaborate. There'll be some fun sessions around that. There'll be some informational sessions around specific tools and strategies and topics. Namely, there'll also be a follow-up on kind of action planning in particular during the post-election gathering as well, kind of with Maddie going deeper on some of these topics that we covered today, kind of in our broad overview. So that also will run November 8th through the 10th. So hopefully folks can block off some time on their calendar and hang out with all of us in this kind of democratic engagement student voting space across the award ceremony and the post-election gathering. And I dropped the link for both into the chat if folks want to check them out and get RSVP'd. But anything else on that, Maddie?
Yep, nope. I think that says it super well. The agenda is finally up on the website that Mike linked to. So there's a lot of really exciting sessions that you should take a look at. You don't have to come to the entire thing every day. If that's not clear, you can come to what you're most excited about or interested in, but there's definitely some really juicy sessions and some really generative sessions that I think everyone will benefit a lot from. And it's also just a good time to connect. It's been a pretty wild year. It's been an odd year. So come say hi, meet some new people, meet some friends, and get ready for 2022.
Awesome. Thanks. Well, we wanted to hold some time here after kind of going through all of that and open it up into some breakout rooms. I've got a couple of questions here. I can drop them in the chat as well, but wanted to maybe see if folks have individual questions about anything we covered today. There should be someone from the organizations in each room, but also happy to just sort of kind of do some brainstorming or hear what folks are thinking about and planning for next year. So I'll open up all the rooms now and we'll be, should move folks right in. Let me make sure. Okay.
Just got off